Bonjour, hello. I'm Paula Speevak Sladkowski, and I'm with Carlton University's Centre for Voluntary Sector Research and Development, le Centre de Recherche et Développement de Secteurs Bénévoles et Communautaires. I'm very happy to be presenting to you an overview and an introduction to the Community Resiliency Handbook, and to give you a little bit of background into the project that involved the Red Cross Society as lead, Volunteer Canada, our centre at Carlton, and many others in terms of looking at the role of the voluntary sector in emergency preparedness. So to begin with, I wanted to share with you a little bit about what we're bringing together in terms of the learnings and many of the areas that you yourselves have been involved with, and we're going to look at the connections between community resiliency, community and neighborhood development, and finally collaboration among nonprofit and voluntary organizations. I wanted to begin with a working definition of community resiliency. The word resiliency has been used over the years in many situations, and I think many people have come to think of resiliency as something you want to achieve in case of an emergency, whereas many others believe that community resiliency is the way you want your community to be on an ongoing basis, because every day in our communities we want citizens to be able to have shelter, safety, feel included, have a sense of belonging, and to really be able to thrive, work, live, and play in a neighborhood or community that makes them feel that they can be the best they can be. So community resiliency, the definition that we're going to start with, is the ongoing ability of a community to work together, to identify their strengths and needs and challenges, to inspire hope and confidence in their future, and to mobilize their collective assets. You may have other ideas about community resiliency, and I really encourage you to think about those definitions and share them with others, including myself, so that we could keep our definition fresh and on an ongoing basis have it include the many thoughts and experiences and insights that you have. Communities that are resilient enhance the quality of life for individuals and families and create community vitality. So that's what I was referring to, that on an ongoing basis, this is our sense of what community resiliency is all about. But also, resilient communities adapt to change and respond to unanticipated events such as health emergencies, natural disasters, or security incidents. And that's the situational that I was referring to. In order to start to look at communities and neighborhoods and what they have to offer each other, their citizens, and the community at large, one of the things that many of you are familiar with is the idea of asset mapping. When a neighborhood and community comes together, that is the citizens, the organizations, the clubs, the institutions, and the services and businesses in that neighborhood and community. We look at what do we have collectively, so that in the event of an emergency we know what to draw on, but as I said, on an ongoing basis, what are the resources and assets that come to bear. So when we look at people, equipment, space, and services that whether citizens, volunteers, leaders, politicians, organizations, business institutions, nonprofit and voluntary sectors have to offer, we are interested in hearing what it is that they use on an ongoing basis for their ongoing life and services and businesses, but also what might they be willing to contribute and offer to the collective. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Perhaps an organization has transportation. Maybe they have horses, skidoos, vehicles that they can bring to bear, again, to transport goods, bring people to safe places. So you want to know who has what kind of vehicle and what kind of transportation is available. You also may have people who are experienced in building things. I recently participated in a community resiliency asset mapping workshop, and the Festival of Agricultural Fairs was present, and their organization said, we have lots of people with tools, with expertise. We know how to build temporary shelters. Within hours we can have something set up. So tools, expertise in building is certainly an asset that can be brought to bear. Other people have volunteers and employees that have time and expertise to contribute in the event of an emergency, and as I said, do contribute their time on an ongoing basis. So time is definitely an asset that we are appreciative of. Many people are trained in emergency response and have taken first aid courses and have equipment for first aid. And that, again, is an asset that you might want to look at when you're looking at community resiliency. There are organizations that deliver meals to frail elderly or prepare meals for shelters, etc., and have kitchens and equipment, and they are able to offer their resources, whether it's the supplies, the equipment, the facility itself to prepare meals, again, on an ongoing basis, but certainly that could be brought to bear in the event of an emergency. Sometimes what we need is resources, cash, finances, and the ability to purchase things that are needed by our citizens, our communities, our organizations in order to offer the kinds of services and programs that are needed. One of the things that I like to offer as an example when we're talking about emergency preparedness and really expanding our notion of involving the nonprofit and voluntary sector is a yoga center. Very often people are surprised when we say, why wouldn't you invite the yoga center to your emergency preparedness committee? And they have blankets, they have mats, and they have people who are very calming. So if you had an emergency, wouldn't you want something soft to lie in and a blanket to keep you warm, and people with these wonderful vibes that are able to really help you center your energy to deal with your emergency. So those are some examples of the assets that could be brought to bear when you're looking at a community development initiative, bringing organizations, people, businesses, and institutions together to look at the assets. So this Community Resiliency Handbook has many activities that can walk you through a process, whether it's a single organization or many organizations together, and as I said, or whether you're taking a multi-sector approach and have government, businesses, community citizens, and politicians all together looking at the assets in a community. When we look at neighborhood development initiatives, this has a lot of good information in terms of the philosophy, the strategy, and also the tools that can be used when we're dealing with small neighborhoods, communities, or larger regions of people, institutions, and organizations. And when you look at many of the community development and neighborhood development initiatives that have taken place over the years, they have many features in common, and these are some of them, and many of you have experienced others. But they're all often about improving the well-being of citizens, involving residents in local decision-making, creating a sense of cohesion, strengthening the relationship between the neighborhood and different governments, establishing linkages among service providers, and also building a sense of community capacity and leadership. One of the things that I learned early on in my career is that citizens really know what they need, and the intervention or support that we can offer to local neighborhoods and communities isn't doing something for somebody, isn't doing the needs assessment and determining what services we need to parachute in. It really is helping that sense of collectivity, the collective voice, in identifying issues, identifying the strengths and assets, and then deciding what it is they want to do together. And as people who live in communities, as I said, we do know what we need, and we are able to bring our assets to bear to achieve our collective vision for our future. Early on in my career, I had an experience where I worked in a nonprofit organization that was a storefront operation doing community grassroots organization at a neighborhood level. And the project was all about bringing services to senior citizens, because this community that I was working in, it's the Côte-des-Neiges area of Montreal, it had been determined through a needs assessment that there were far more senior adults than in the community at large, and certainly in other regions of the province and country. And so we were told to set up Meals on Wheels, telephone reassurance, grocery delivery, and so on. All kinds of services to help people live independently in their homes. Once we started visiting people and asking them about these services, we were told, we actually don't want to stay at home and wait for someone to phone and wait for delivery of meals and wait for someone to visit us. We would like to get out and meet people and shop and take care of our business on our own. We just need a little bit of help. And one of the things that they identified was the fact that on a major intersection in that neighborhood, there was not a bus shelter. So if it was raining or too sunny or snowy, they just weren't able to manage being outside in the cold or rain or sun to wait for the bus. So as a community, what we did was we brought people together. We got a sense of how strongly people felt, where were the major places and the major intersections in that neighborhood where a bus shelter would be helpful. And we worked together with the city to actually figure out how do you get bus shelters put up and who makes those decisions. 10 months later, we had our first bus shelter erected and had a neighborhood celebration around the bus shelter. And that bus shelter has proven to be a symbol in that neighborhood of what we can do together. And again, emphasizing the fact that people know what they need. Often solutions are very simple, and they're attainable by working together, by expressing that collective voice, by bringing to bear the many assets in a community, whether it's getting the politician on board, figuring out the bureaucracy, mobilizing citizens in a neighborhood to work together and to figure out how to make change.